Good afternoon. We are having a very important debate. This debate is about choice. This debate is about the current elections and also in future elections and also past elections, because what we've been hearing while talking to voters is really a very simple thing, that most voters claim they do not have a choice. And today what I think I and Amitabh will do is discuss this topic in great detail. Let me get Amitabh on board. I think Amitabh has to accept my request and then we can start. Yeah, there is Amitabh. Hi, Amitabh.
Hi, Subhash.
Fantastic.
Finally.
So, Amitabh, this whole conversation about choice, and before, let me just introduce Amitabh first. Before, Amitabh has a very long. What happened? Are you able to see me, Amitabh?
No.
Something has to. Yeah, there I am again. Okay, bizarre. So before I start interviewing Amitabh, I wanted to introduce Amitabh. Amitabh is a well-known political consultant, well-known political expert on national television. He is interviewed in every magazine. He writes for every magazine. And Amitabh, having written with Amitabh is a very insightful perspective to elections. Many of the things that we are seeing today happening, Amitabh had predicted a few years ago. And his very pragmatic view of things. So I think he's the person who should start talking about choice. Amitabh, do you think voters don't have a choice, or is it something else?
No, I think voters have a lot of choice. And even if you see Maharashtra elections, on each seat there are more than 10 candidates. More than 90 parties participated in Maharashtra elections last year, more than 45 in Haryana. Out of 30 states, there are 14 chief ministers of different parties. So actually there is a problem of plenty. There are too many parties in India, and we have for long debated whether we need to move to the US system wherein there are only two political parties mainly. So there is a lot of choice to the voters. It is just that what has happened is that people who support the opposition parties currently, or who do not ascribe to the right-wing ideology or the policies and programs of the BJP government, because of the weakening of the opposition, which is Congress, is in doldrums. It has been suffering from a leadership crisis for long. Left is almost finished. They feel that they don't have a viable choice to take on the BJP, which is spreading its wings and getting stronger day by day. Mind you, BJP is in a position which Congress enjoyed for 40 years. So people are probably getting anxious too early. Congress enjoyed this position for 40 years and BJP has been in its dominant position for the last 5 years only. So if the opposition does not get back its act right, then they will probably rule for a longer period. But what is that period? It is very difficult to say. There is a lot of choice, I would say. There's a lot of choice.
In fact, Amitabh, I want to talk a little bit about something I learned many years ago, maybe 15-20 years ago. A gentleman by the name Jan Hofmeyr. And what he said was that brand loyalty, one of the drivers of brand loyalty were also the whole availability of alternatives, whether there is an availability of alternatives. Sometimes we make choices, whether it is Indian Railways or maybe the Congress of the past, when we think that the other alternatives are not as good. So that is obviously driving the BJP's performance at some level. But if one way to look at it from another dimension, which is risk, I think that in very simplistic language, at the national level, the average voter sees a bigger risk of voting back the opposition than voting back the BJP, at least in the 2019 elections. They may have been critical at some level, saying, certain things are not in place, but the fact of the matter is that they saw BJP as a much smaller risk. Now, let me expand this, and I'm sure you have also seen this data, that in the 2019 elections, when we actually look at satisfaction with the Modi government, in many states, the satisfaction with the Modi government is actually very high. When satisfaction levels are high, the whole argument that there is no choice is actually very weak. It's actually a positive choice. Perhaps every voter is not satisfied. When we talk to maybe 20-25% of voters who are dissatisfied for a variety of reasons, for them it could be that they don't have a choice, or Congress was the only option, or BJP was the only option for those people. But the fact of the matter is that in many states, a lot of the vote for the BJP was a positive vote. Now you can add this whole dimension of Balakot and Pulwama. You could do tax breaks that were given before the election. You could talk about 10% reservation. All of this added on top of the fact that the government was seen very positively. The leadership of Modi was seen very positively. But here is a small dimension that I want to bring to the table, which will actually talk about this whole issue of choice being more complex than what it is. Now, one way you can deliver very high satisfaction levels, and I speak from some authority, I've written a book on this topic of satisfaction. One way you can demonstrate very high satisfaction is by telling people that whatever they have got so far is very, very bad until 5 years ago, and so whatever you deliver is seen as great. So you deliver, you set extremely average to below average standards and then deliver. So that can also drive satisfaction. And I'll illustrate this point no better than Andhra Pradesh. The Andhra Pradesh economy grew at 15% in the last 5 years. Okay. Jagan Reddy, with a very well-run campaign, convinced the average voter of Andhra Pradesh that Andhra Pradesh is not doing well. Andhra Pradesh per capita GDP this year is 1.64 lakhs, or almost 2.5 times that of Uttar Pradesh. But in Uttar Pradesh, it's possible that the BJP government, which is underperforming big time, will get re-elected, whereas Chandrababu Naidu didn't get re-elected. So the second, I think the important dimension is also about how the political narrative is pushed and how you're able to provide a credible alternative, and also into the mind of the consumer that, hey, what you're getting is bad. I think for the opposition in national level, it was not just about choice, it was also about they didn't make a good case that BJP did a very bad job, and that is how the voter came to the conclusion that they have no alternative and this is the best I will get. Otherwise, as Andhra Pradesh case, Chandrababu, Jagan, whose campaign was run by Prashant Kishore, made a fantastic case. And believe me, Andhra Pradesh is the second fastest growing state in the country for the last 5 years. It's moved from nowhere to in the top 10 or top 7 or 8 of the per capita numbers. So they've done very well, but fantastic campaign. So there is a second dimension, I feel, which is about how the campaign makes the narrative in such a manner where they say that, look, your life will get better in this, much better, and I am the right person for it. When Rahul Gandhi launched Nyay, I think he gave them the impression that he's not interested in 79% of the voters. Nyay was a 21% focused, program. So I think that, so when a voter comes to the conclusion that they have not choice, it is a variety of things. One is perceived risk, but also how badly the opposition has run a campaign. So that is another dimension that I wanted to add, Amitabh.
Yeah, of course. I mean, when we talk about choice, if we look at the traditional vote bank of BJP or Congress for that matter, I think it's not more than 20-25%. But BJP received around 37-38% on its own and around 45% together with its allies. So, and in this election, around 1/3 voters of BJP voted for, would not have voted for BJP if Modi was not the PM candidate. So what has happened is that this swing voter or undecided voter or voter who was voting earlier for other regional party or national party like Congress is being drawn to vote for Modi because of many reasons. Because of the persona, because of his leadership, because of the campaign, because of many other things. So of course, it's a campaign well run. Politics is the art of managing the contradictions. It's not, as you mentioned, that when Congress announced Nyay, it literally excluded 80% of the electorate. But BJP's actions and policies also have been like that, but they have been able to manage the contradictions. When they don't give tickets to a single minority candidate in UP, it is saying It is excluding 20% of the population. But by that, it is uniting the other 80% of the population who probably are voting across caste lines to a singular party. What has also happened over the years is that the rise of the middle class has been fantastic. So, though our per capita income levels on an average basis will still be, I think, 1.5 lakhs around, which is fairly low, today the middle class and the rich class are around 50% of the population. And this class is the aspirational or the new middle class, as it is called. We've seen that does not vote for bread and butter issues, because bread and butter issues are actually solved for them already. So they are more aspirational. They vote more on nationalism, India becoming a superpower, India ne Pakistan ko thoka. So all these issues which appeal to the middle class voter are no longer the traditional bijli sadak pani issues. So this BJP has been able to understand very well the rise of the middle class, and it is not only getting the middle class votes, but also getting the poor to vote for them because of the comparatively better implementation of the schemes. The schemes we know are mostly inspired by Congress governments or by some other regional parties, but they have been able to implement it better, or at least perceive, or at least give that impression that the implementation of these schemes has been better. Yeah.
No, I think all very good points, Amitabh, and I agree with you that BJP not only does a good job, it does a fantastic job of managing contradictions. I think they've been able to build a very broad-based alliance of, when we look at the caste architecture, whether it is upper caste, scheduled caste. In fact, with scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, their vote share is much larger than the opposition. OBCs anyway, they dominate, and upper caste, they have always dominated. But the fact that they've gone across, and not only that, I think the BJP has also been able to do well in both rich states and poor states. So that's the other thing that they've managed to do. And so I'll explore a little bit on the opposition side, because I think before that, I just want to go back to this conversation that people have about saying, I don't have a choice. I think when a person says, I don't have a choice, either it's a specific individual mindset issue saying that I'm very helpless, I'm going to go with whatever is the reality, which I find it difficult to believe. I think many times when people are telling you they don't have a choice, they're essentially reluctant to tell you that they're actually committed to a decision. I feel that is the real reason. And it is not because they don't have a choice. They do have a choice. They just feel that, that this is my choice, but they don't feel confident enough to defend that choice. I think that's the reason why people say. But I think that even if, let's assume there are a lot of swing voters who, for example, as Amitabh, you pointed out, that 1 in 3 voters have voted for BJP purely on the basis of Modi, they could have theoretically voted for the opposition as well. The problem with the opposition is, and that is and you have worked a little bit with the opposition, I have worked very closely with them, is that the opposition does not have a broad differentiating ideology that will, position to the average voter to say, here is an alternate world that will change your life. And this is where I think BJP has really trapped the opposition. The BJP has trapped the opposition because BJP earlier used to not win votes with the lower income groups. They were a predominantly middle class party. Through Modi and through the massive programs that have directly delivered some benefits to the household, what they've managed to do is attack the opposition where they were strong, which is amongst the poor voters. The opposition, on the other hand, and we discussed this a few years ago about what Congress should do, or what in terms of actually targeting the upper and middle class votes, the opposition across the country, I can tell you, has made zero attempts to reach out to the upper class, beyond upper and middle class, beyond this token employment program and things like that. Even today, the opposition is stuck with Garibi and Kisan, who, only make up for some of the voters. So I think that the problem with the opposition is also a lack of a very large strategic narrative. And there is only one reason for that, Amitabh, I feel. That the composition of people who make up for the opposition and the opposition leadership, by and large, come from very, very affluent households. And I think that seems to be one of the big challenges that the average, average opposition voter is struggling to find, because the people who are running the opposition, by and large, if you see across parties, come from very affluent households. They are unable to understand the real issues of the middle class and offer a solution. And unless they mix the combination of who makes up the opposition changes, and we have more people who really understand the voters, the opposition will continue to struggle and will not be able to win this 12-15% swing voters. So I feel a lot of fault lies in with the more. Can you hear me? Do you want to log out and log in again, Amitabh? So you had some tech difficulties, so just waiting for Amitabh to. But yeah, I was trying to make this point that the opposition leadership, there's so little input from the large 60% middle class. So if you look at how the opposition has builds its manifestos, they're either very generic, generic kind of commentary around what they're going to do for the middle class. A case in point being infrastructure, which is a major issue for the middle class, and cost of education, for example, is a major issue for the middle class. Cost of healthcare is a major issue for the middle class. There are many other middle class issues like employment. So the key middle class issues, the opposition has no view at all. Other thing is, for example, let's look at retired people, and most of us in the middle class, fund our older parents, etc., or take care of them at some level. There isn't much. So the opposition has no either emotional or practical solutions for the middle class, and that I think excludes them from 60%. And then they're competing with the BJP with respect to farmers and with respect to poor voters, and BJP with its reach and with the fact that they're in power and in government, and they're able to outwit the opposition big time in these rural towns. So I think part of the reason why we have come to this issue of no choice is because of serious issues with respect to how the makeup of the opposition and how they're connecting with the vast majority of middle class voters. Sorry, Amitabh. Your turn.
Yeah, essentially over the years, what has happened, as you pointed out, is that Congress became a party of landlords and influencers. So they had landlords and influencers on their sort of payroll, or they were giving tickets to those guys. And those were the guys who were managing the voters. So the connect with the voters has actually significantly reduced or diminished in case of the Congress party. This is why the bottom-up feedback is or the real feedback is not coming to the party top leadership. So that's why they were erring on something like Rafale. I mean, I don't know which surveys were telling them that Rafale is doing well with the electorate, and that is why one of their pet projects also, despite it being catering to only 20% of the electorate, did not even reach the electorate because they don't have that last mile connectivity and technologically also they are not as competent as BJP or some of the regional parties are. So they were not able to disseminate this information to the end voter.
There is a question there in terms of what is your opinion about parties like Swaraj,
Swaraj has to first contest, then people will form an opinion about whether to vote or not to vote for them. See, what has also happened over the years is that people have seen AAP's success and they feel that they'll come into the election in the first year and win the election and become chief minister. I mean, BJP got their due, or has reached this position after 35 years of the party being formed. So it takes a lot of time to actually participate in the electoral process and emerge victorious. So Swaraj has to first field candidates, raise issues of people, work on the streets, oppose the ruling party, and then try to establish a base. But that takes many years. Even AAP, when it formed the government in 2013, I mean, the people were working for almost a decade in Delhi. So it's not easy for those parties to just come up with success overnight. It takes a lot of time. I mean, people used to ridicule RSS workers and pass comments like khaki knickers and this and that, but they are the real you can say the difference factor or differentiating factor between the other parties, because they have a network of people who, because of the ideology, are willing to work for you day and night without any significant return expectations.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very important point that you cannot build parties overnight. So just to tackle Swapnil's question, Swaraj has raised many issues that affect people on the group, whether it's rural distress, rising unemployment. Swapnil, my view on this is that these issues are very, very black and white. And frankly, in my view, and what little I'm sure Amitabh will agree on the ground, these issues are not so black and white. They're very, very grey. And the reason that they're not making headway, not just Swaraj, I'm talking even about the opposition, the reason they're not making headway is that complete lack of connect on the ground. So I'll give you an example. Let's look at OBC voters. Now, this is a massive group of voters across the country. Now, when I use the word OBC voters, I'm not arguing that OBC voters purely vote on the basis of caste, or OBC issues are the only issues that matter to them. It's not. A lot of issues matter to them. But go back to the opposition, and when you look at how they are targeting the OBC voters, beyond a few of the OBC leaders, particularly upper OBC leaders, there isn't any OBC leader in the opposition. So let's take Akhilesh or Lalu and his son and so on. They're only targeting a very small part of the OBC vote. Look at how Congress is targeting OBC vote across states. They have hardly targeted them. Now, if you're not going to reach out to 30-40% of the votes with a very, very clear-cut proposition, then there isn't any so now when you go to this 30-40%, there are complex rainbow of issues. Some of them are very, very local. Some of them are more emotional. Some of them are more national. Some of them are more community. So there are a variety of dimensions, which is where, as Amitabh spoke about, the people on the ground, the karyakartas and people like that, who genuinely are engaging with his voters, are able to connect better. So let me illustrate this point a little bit in detail. This whole idea of seva is very important element of the BJP. I don't mean just and I'm not saying this as a matter of praise or credit. I'm just stating a fact that the whole idea, and which is why look at how many BJP MPs and MLAs leave their party, not just now, in the last 50 years. They don't. Very few of them leave. And look at the kind of response that you will see in the opposition. And take the example of Swaraj. The Swaraj party, which is party in a way of AAP, split from the AAP. So you're talking about people whose personal egos are more important than some of the agenda items that they may have agreed upon. And it works both the ways. I'm not blaming Swaraj for it or Arvind Kejriwal for it, but I cannot imagine that a very young party where there are a lot of people. So if Seva was the central theme, you wouldn't have these kind of arguments and splits. And that for me is the fundamental problem with parties like Swaraj, where personal egos and personal importance are more important than service to society. And when that happens, you're not listening. When that happens, you're not really engaging. You're engaging with them in a superficial level, more what I call media level. It's saying, farm distress is a problem. But how many of us know that the farm distress they're talking about in some places has always existed? Swaraj, for example, has spoken about Bundelkhand and places like that, where the point I'm trying to make is that maybe they mean good, but if you are going to be not operating at the level of the average guy on the ground and engage with them, I think we are going to continue to struggle. Here is another question. Do you think IAC aided BJP's win and is difficult to fight? in my view, that one of the biggest reasons, at least I speak with looking back at the entire thing, one of the biggest reasons why the Congress lost substantial credibility is the oil prices of 2010, 11, 12, and 13, and some unfortunate policies of the Congress party between 2008 to 10. So a combination of 3-4 things came together. One is the corruption scandals. The second is the oil prices, which led to massive inflation. And the third is the Congress party's massive budgetary expansion between 10 and 12. All of them came together. Yeah, somebody like an ISC came and lit this up, but I'll be very honest that if we actually look at the data, the biggest bounces have come not when IOC was protesting. IOC was protesting in Jantar Mantar. The biggest bounces came in when corruption scandals came out and the economy started to go down. Voters in India are far more mature and intelligent than we think. And I think they have given it a lot of time. And then the emergence of Modi and the whole marketing behind it, the inability of Rahul Gandhi to prove himself as a leader. In fact, he was not even saying I'm contesting as a leader. All of that added up. I just think IAC is given too much of credibility. The reality is at that time, voters were very frustrated with many things happening at the same time. At one level, there were these corruption scandals. The second level, there's inflation. Third level, economy is slowing down. Currency going off. Everything seemed to be out of control at that time. And then, as things were going out of control, here is a guy we have got from Gujarat who has proven himself there, comes out as a no-nonsense guy, and he says, look, I'll change your life, I'll make your life better. So I don't think IAC is given far greater credit than, the impact of Modi and this situation that it was, some of it was in control of the Congress, some of which was not, but all came together and, created the situation. So we have to look at it in a more comprehensive way than to, say Anna Hazare led to Narendra Modi. I think that's not a fair assessment. The second part of the question was about the left of center. See, left of center parties all over the world are split. I have never studied this reason why. I'm just following Amitabh. I'm following the Canadian elections, and the Conservatives never win a majority of their own, but the opposition is always split. Okay, always split. Now go to UK. Now you see the Liberals and Labour splitting the votes so much that Conservatives will still probably come back to power. You can go to Israel, for example. All the left and centrist parties are split. All the rightist parties are together. So in every country, the left of center parties, for a variety of reasons, don't collaborate and don't come together under a single, whatever you call it. So that being the case, you're always going to have even a party with 37 or 40% of vote constantly winning elections, not because they don't enjoy majority alone, but it's also because of how the opposition is operating. It's not that there are no national issues. They don't have a national solution, a single solution for all of us, because each of them is operating at, one is doing Nyay, one is doing something else, somebody is doing something else. I don't know what is it that the opposition together is offering. So I think that is a bigger issue. The opposition is always split and left of center parties are always split. Amitabh, your turn.
Yeah, see, just to say that the opposition is split, that's why a particular party is winning also is not the correct assessment, I would say, in this particularly in this aspect, because since you've said earlier as well, this satisfaction levels with Modi government or Fadnavis or Khattar or the state governments are percent levels, which means that a lot of vote is a pro-incumbency vote. So they are not winning just because the opposition is split. They are winning because they've done work, and the fact that opposition is split also we are talking about 200 plus 225 in Maharashtra. We've also seen that when the opposition is united, like in the biggest state of Uttar Pradesh, then also the BJP secured a fantastic, it was just 9 seats than the 2014 tally. Just two parties or the opposition coming together without any ideological base or just for the sake of power is also not seen rightly by the voters. So even if tomorrow Congress and left come together, the first and foremost thing which it needs to come out is a common minimum program or a manifesto sort of a thing, so that people believe that okay.
So, sorry, I think we lost Amitabh there. There were some tech issues, I guess. But I think Amitabh was making a few important points there. I think we're just getting on board now.
Have to come up with a common minimum program, and that was missing in the 2019 elections. They were dilly-dallying for months that they will put up united candidates and one-on-one candidates. Even if they would have put up one-on-one candidates, they might not just have won, because it's not only about arithmetic, it's a lot about chemistry, as we've seen in UP. Even the recent by-polls in UP will give you an inclination that if SP and BSP were together, perhaps BJP would have lost. But when these two forces or forces which have opposed each other for years come together, they antagonize their own vote blocks or their own voting segments, and people from there either shift to the other party or or abstain from voting, and that is how it impacts their electoral performance.
So Amitabh, final words in terms of saying, do really Indian voters not have a choice? What would you summarize as the key headlines from your perspective?
Then I would divide the Indian voters into three categories. One which is satisfied with the government, has a choice, is going and voting. One which is not satisfied with the government, perhaps today thinks that the alternative which are available to them are not strong enough or viable enough to defeat the current dispensation. Then perhaps they have to wait, or see, voters also have to play a role. They have to force these parties to speak on issues, or they have to think of some other alternative, like AAP appeared in Delhi from a public movement. And there are a third set of voters which are neutral or swinging voters or undecided voters. And these voters typically go with the hawa, as we call it, or with the dispensation which is winning. And there the campaign, your leadership, your manifesto points and your track record are very, very important. And even in these elections, we've seen that the opposition, which is Congress and NCP, and Congress is entirely missing from the campaign, and it has left it to Sharad Pawar to do most of the work. So if opposition is just sitting at home and waiting for the day that apna time aayega, people will be fed up with this government sometime in the future, and then they will come back to power, like in Rajasthan or MP or Chhattisgarh, then that is not a pretty good strategy, and that is not appealing to their set of voters.
Yeah, great, Amitabh. Thanks a lot. And I think broadly, I think you've summarized all the points. Firstly, I think there's no doubt at all in my mind and your mind as well that voters do have an option. And when voters are saying they don't have a choice, it's a very limited set of voters. Most voters from the data are clearly making positive choices. If there are some voters who are talking about not having a choice, they're talking about two things. One is they're saying that the opposition is not at all doing a good job, and we covered that in great detail in terms of how the opposition is structured, what kind of ideas they're coming up with, how well they're connected to the ground, and a variety of other issues with respect to the opposition. So there is one dimension to that. The second dimension is that the ruling party, whether it's the BJP or whoever it is probably can do a much better job than they are. And I think we're seeing that in the performance now. They seem to be struggling a little bit. So I think when voters are genuinely referring to, lack of choices, they're essentially saying, look, I'm not happy with the way the opposition is organized. They're not giving me a solution. And they're also critical of the ruling party in terms of what the ruling party is offering to them. So this is a group of people, this is a minority. And clearly, I think this is a group that eventually, if neither of the side keeps growing, this group will start, being critical and will push the country forward. So if the group of people who are saying, I don't have choice increases, you will see that suddenly they'll be the swing voters, and they're going to push either the government to do a much better job, which is good for the country, or the opposition to substantially change their behavior, which is also good for the country. But I think we are in between a cusp period. It needs to be seen whether a highly aggressive government and BJP are the ones who will reform and take these people on board fully, or will it be the opposition that will completely restructure themselves and offer a new alternative? I think this only time will tell. But one thing is sure, to say that we have no choices is a very, very wrong assessment. Indians do have choices, and we are at this moment probably exercising choices that are the best at the moment. Thanks a lot, Amitabh.
Thank you.
And this has been one more round of our loudest debates, and we hope you'll join us again after the election. We'll come back with another round of this particular debate. Thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.